Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's great to see you here today. We're going to start our celebration service by standing up and singing. And so let us continue to breathe deeply and become still in the spaciousness that Amy led us to with her beautiful words. And as we breathe in and breathe out, we relax, we go deeper, we open our hearts, and we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
An excerpt from Buddhist Boot Camp by Timber Hawkeye. I was taught that feelings naturally come and go like clouds in the sky, whereas emotions are feelings with a story attached to them. Those emotions can last for as long as we keep feeding the story, and this can go on for years. So when people feel sad, I understand, but when they emote sad, I get very confused. Buddhism teaches us that if we get attached to impermanent things, and feelings are a perfect example of things that are impermanent, then our lives will be full of anguish. But if we can live each moment without getting attached to it, then we can eliminate the very cause of suffering right then and there and joyfully live our lives. It's natural to feel disappointed when things don't work out as you had hoped, but the only natural response when that happens is to move on. Difficult as that may sometimes seem, it's still easier than clinging to what is no longer there. All you can do is remind yourself to let go. And so it is.
And so it is. And so in the spirit of reminding ourselves to let go, let us let go of any idea that we have about who we are and move into the truth of true remembrance, remembering the I Am presence that lives and moves and has its perfect being within us. As we sing together, I am remembering who I am. We know this for ourselves, but we also know it for all beings everywhere. Our song blesses life and everything, and so it is. Here we go. And in this beautiful stillness that is both empty and full, we remember. We bring that remembrance into our awareness as we gently breathe in and exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
This is a year of extraordinary joy. This is a year of extraordinary joy. I name and proclaim it as extraordinary joy. I need to expand my heart to make room for even more. I need to clear away the clutter of the past, for the sky's gonna open and it's gonna pour. This is a year of extraordinary joy. This is a year of extraordinary joy. I name and proclaim it as extraordinary joy. I bless the seasons, how they change, witnessing life begin anew. Summer will bow to harvest, and winter's sleep makes way for springtime's bloom, showing us that this is a year of extraordinary joy. This is a year of extraordinary joy. I name and and proclaim it as extraordinary joy. I don't need to know how it will unfold. I just let it steep within my being. 'Cause being swept away by worries of the day keep me from the truth that believing is seeing. This is a year of extraordinary joy. This is a year of extraordinary joy. I name and proclaim it as extraordinary joy. I name and proclaim it as extraordinary joy.
I have a special guest coming for something. Okay. All right, so a year of extraordinary joy, right? Yeah, amen. Yeah, I think we're due, right? Yeah, so the name of my talk this morning is Happy New Year. And the reason I got that thought about Happy New Year is that, you know, we say Happy New Year and we just kind of say it as a routine because that's what we say, right? But I've noticed that sometimes our resolutions are not necessarily about creating Happy New Year. They're more about creating a self-disciplined New Year. You know, can you imagine going, self-disciplined New Year to you, Maggie? Or self-improvement. Greg, I sure hope you improve yourself in this new year. What was the other one? Or obligation. Doreen, could you live up to your obligations this new year? Have an obligated new year, okay? Wouldn't that be fun? Have a thinner new year, yeah. Yeah, that's really special. Yeah, oh, this could go in a really dark direction, so we'll just cut it off right here. So anyway, speaking of darkness, as I was contemplating this idea of Happy New Year, it reminded me of a scene from Seinfeld, and I'll set it up for a minute, and then we're going to actually have a guest actor come up and read it with me. I wonder who that actor could be. But basically what's happening, and I did not have a chance to watch it last night, but as I recall, George is dating this young woman, and he really likes her, and this woman thinks that he's funny. But then he goes out to dinner with George goes out to dinner with this woman, and Jerry and Elaine come along, and Jerry, of course, is a comedian. So George, after the woman leaves the table for a minute, George says to Jerry, "Can you stop being so funny?" And so they're talking about birthdays, and this is Jerry's response. So Jerry Seinfeld is coming up on stage. Actually a compilation of two scenes. Yeah. So as I said, they're talking about birthdays, happy birthday, and this is what Jerry responds.
Birthdays are merely symbolic of how another year has gone by and how little we've grown. No matter how desperate we are that someday a better self will emerge, with each flicker of the candle on the cake, we know it's not to be. That for the rest of our sad, wretched, pathetic lives, this is who we are to the bitter end. Inevitably, irrevocably. Happy birthday? No such thing.
My goodness, you're a very serious person, aren't you?
Well, with so many people in the world deprived and unhappy, it doesn't seem like it would be fair to be too cheerful.
I understand. Now Jerry reaches for the milk for his coffee. Oh, I think it's curdled.
I don't care.
Do you ever laugh?
Not really. Sometimes when I'm in the tub.
That is so sad. What do you do?
Oh, I'm a comedian.
And so it is. Scene. So that's the deal with Happy New Year sometimes. It's like, Happy New Year? No such thing, based on the resolutions that we make. I have a thinner New Year and whatnot. I did try and look up some really, really good resolutions, some really funny or really dark resolutions online, and many of them were too dark for church purposes. But my favorite one that I saw that I can say here was written by Rainn Wilson. Do you guys know who he is? Is that his last name? He's in The Office, right? He played Dwight, the guy with the big guy with the big forehead, or we call somebody with a big forehead, we say he's got a 5 head instead of a 4 head. So anyway, his resolution, and he's also a very devout follower of the Baha'i faith, by the way. But anyway, his resolution was, this year I resolved to spend less time interacting with human beings and more time staring at my cell phone. And then he added, so far it's going really well. So that's the deal with resolutions. It's like we say them, and we say Happy New Year, and then we bend over backwards to make resolutions that don't really have a lot of joy in them. And that's what I'm hoping for us to accomplish today, is to look at our resolutions in a new way, and to put some joy into the ones that we have, but also to make at least one resolution that is completely devoted to joy. I was thinking about how odd that is, that we say Happy New Year and then we do the opposite. And thinking about that, it seems like in the human race there is sometimes an avoidance of joy. And certainly things happen that upset us or disturb us, and yet I found that there is always room for joy. With the fires and with things that are going on with people in the congregation and certain things that are happening in my personal life now, I've been caught up in a lot of sadness and a lot of trauma. And I remember writing a silly dog song with Amy in the middle of it. I write silly dog songs. You may not. Would you like a sample? Yeah. I don't think I can do that one. The one I did with Amy is a little too dark. You think? What do you think? Just a. Well, it's, no, it's too soon. Sorry, I can't. It's about the Thomas Fire and how dogs, it's a bad thing for most people, but dogs have been chasing bunnies and rodents for years, and now they can finally catch them because they're burnt up. So I won't sing that one. I'll sing. This is about Saraswati, my dog's mange, and it's to Away in a Manger, and it goes, go away, little mange, here on top of my head. You're itchy and scratchy and turning quite red. The Demodex mites have been eating your coat. They gave you a bald spot, and you hope they croak. Thank you. My opera bows. Thank you. Yeah. So anyway, I wrote the silly dog song, sent it to somebody who was upset, and he wrote back, wow, how can you find happiness in this? And I said, there's always room for joy. And that's a spiritual truth. There's always room for joy, but we have to get out of the way so that joy can come in. Wayne Dyer talked about, when he was alive, he used to talk about how ego stands for edging God out. And I would say that there's also ego, which is edging joy out. We have a lot of strategies that we do, I think out of a sense of self-protection to edge joy out. One of those strategies is that I think that we think that being sort of morose and blasé is kind of sophisticated, Part of that Seinfeld episode that we did, the woman that Jerry is being all, dark with, she ends up being very attracted to him because he's so morose. Anybody here ever date somebody that was morose and dark? And anybody? Okay, good. Yeah. It's very attractive in an odd way. I think it's sort of like a messianic complex, where you think you can cheer him up or what have you. Anyway, I'm digressing. So that's one way that we block joy. Another way is this old concept of sin, this race consciousness idea of sin that we carry around with us. Many of us come from Puritan heritage, and we live in a country that was found by the Puritans, and there's a huge amount of influence in that we really can't be having too much of a good time. That saying that you've heard me say before is a Puritan is anybody who is deeply afraid that somebody someplace else is having a good time. right? And so it feels almost wrong to have a good time because it must mean that we're doing something wrong. And particularly when there's suffering in the world. Many of us are resistant to joy because there's suffering in the world. And if we feel like if we have joy, then that takes something away or that's disrespectful to the people who are suffering. But really the opposite is true. Our joy is not the problem. Our joy is the solution. Sometimes we think that our joy is dependent upon circumstances. In the Timber Hawkeye book, Buddhist Boot Camp, he writes about a time when his father came to visit him. And his father was just a regular suburban person, probably like many of us, and he had a lot of possessions, and Timber Hawkeye is a minimalist. He lives on very little income, and he doesn't have many possessions. And so he was kind of concerned when his father came to visit him. When his father came, he looked around Timber's house, and he was like, whoa, there's nothing here. But then they had a month together of no television and long walks and deep conversations. And after the month, the father looked at Timber and he said, you know what? You have everything you need. So sometimes I think that's a barrier to our joy. And that's why we make those self-improvement or disciplined or obligatory resolutions. We say to ourselves, if only I lose 10 pounds, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be loved. If I can get this great job, then I'll be safe. If I can get a partner in life, then I'll feel lovable. And really, you know, it's like I think it's the Zen teaching says, we need to enter into those states before they are made manifest. The Zen says, enter into sufficiency while it is still insufficiency. So we enter into the joy of being perhaps having a fit body while we still have a body that's not as fit as we would like it to be. And we enter into the joy of having a relationship, of love, when we don't have a relationship. And we enter into the triumph of success even when we feel unsuccessful. Because all of those things, happiness and all of those things are not dependent upon any conditions. All of those things are impermanent, right? He talks a lot about impermanence in this book. All of those things are impermanent and fleeting, but the changeless being that is spirit, that is in all of us, is all of those qualities and more. And they are always available to us when we let them in. One other thing that I thought of that sometimes stands in the way of our ability to receive joy is having bad experiences with joy. But that's not really joy. Joy is always a good experience. What I'm talking about when I say bad experiences with joy is I'm talking about bad experiences with pleasure and instant gratification. Anybody? Oh, hi, Rick. Sorry to out you to everybody, but yeah, you know, there's that book, I thought back to my dating days, and there's that book that's, what is it? I'm looking for Mr. Right, but I'll settle for Mr. Right now. Right? Again, anybody ever done that? Mr. or Ms., depending on your orientation and whatever. So, you know, some instant gratification is not really joy. It's just satisfying an itch that will come back. So we have to learn to discern between pleasure and happiness. And one of the ways that we do that is to, when we're making a choice, you know, my particular drug of choice right now is chocolate chip cookies, is that when we're faced with this choice of instant gratification, it feels like it's going to make you really joyful. It feels like it's going to make you happy. But we can always ask ourselves, is this choice going to lead to instant gratification, or is this about long-term happiness? And I found that to be very helpful, to say, okay, what I really want, this does not really support what I want. This chocolate chip cookie from Starbucks, it's so delicious, but I can't have it. This doesn't support what I really want. I really want long-term happiness and a body that feels fit and sound and that can carry me through life so that I can do what I need to do. So there's all of that. And then all of these things that I'm mentioning, all of our barriers to joy, all of our ways of edging joy out, I think they fit into a larger category of story. You know, the reading that Hugh did talked about how feelings just pass through like clouds, but emotions are feelings with a story attached to them. Some of our emotions are feelings with a mini-series attached to them because they go on so long. You know, they're just on and on forever, and we keep pulling it up and telling it again and again and again. And really, you know, an emotion or a story that we keep telling that generates an emotion that we don't want to feel, that is really a decision to be upset. Do you see that? It's really a decision. It's not always conscious, but we are unconsciously or consciously deciding to be upset when we repeat stories over and over again that cause us to feel badly. Now, we don't recognize that there's another option, that we can actually let go of that story and the world won't collapse, that we can do something else, that we can call a practitioner and get some prayer, that we can pray ourselves, or that we can meditate, or that we can ask our higher power, what is a different way to think about this, right? In Course in Miracles, how can I see this differently? But all of the stories that we have are optional because we live in a world of infinite possibilities, and that includes a world of infinite thought where we can move past the story that is pressing us down and causing us to feel something less than joy, and then call forth a story that feels completely joyous and completely free and completely wonderful. Right? Am I right? Are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? On a good day, yes. You know, and I was trying to think of an example of an optional story, because sometimes when you tell people that their emotions are based on a decision to continue to tell a story, but you can see that there's another way of thinking what they're thinking about, sometimes people are offended by that. They think, no, this is real. And yes, we feel our feelings, but we don't get stuck there. We acknowledge our feelings, but we acknowledge them for the purpose of working with them and allowing them to be a catalyst into something greater, right? So I was starting to tell you how I experienced this in my life and how I feel that I've transcended it. Oddly, after all the prayer and the going to church every Sunday, strangely enough, I feel that I've transcended an issue or one or two. That's a joke. All right. Because if you do pray and if you do attend church regularly, you do tend to transcend your issues. That was an Oscar Wilde moment. That was Oscar Wilde saying, when I drink copious amounts of alcohol, I exhibit all the signs of drunkenness. That was me saying, when I meditate, when I pray, when I do spiritual practice, when I attend church, my life changes. Shocking, right? Okay. All right. Let's let that go. And let me tell you the story. So you may remember I went to India 3 years ago, and at the time I was just horrified that I was going to India. I had a list of 10 reasons why I didn't want to go, and my husband fully supported me in acknowledging that list with me, because when I told him I thought I might be going, he was like, you're going to hate it. And there were many, many reasons that I didn't want to go. The biggest one being that I was afraid that seeing people in distress and poverty would be too upsetting. But there was also little stuff like, you can't drink the water, dysentery, being on a plane or traveling for 30+ hours, all of that stuff. But I went, and it turned out to be a wonderful trip, despite the fact that there was a bit of a tragedy going on as I was leaving. My dog started dying, but she waited until I got back, and it was fine, and it was a beautiful trip. And in this trip to India, I'm going to work with my friend Nipun Mehta, who is a friend to many of you, and Nipun Mehta is a spiritual teacher that teaches kindness all over the world and teaches generosity, and it's been a real honor to be asked. He's asked a lot of, I think 50 or 60 spiritual leaders from all over the world to come and just sit in meditation and prayer about how to further our participation in bringing more goodness and kindness into the world, and I was very, very honored to be asked and very honored to go. Several years ago, he asked me to go to Bolinas to do the same thing. I'm like, Bolinas? That's a little easier than India. But when I went up there with all these great gurus and kindness, I thought, what am I doing here? I haven't done anything. And then I realized, of course, how insulting that is to all of us here, that we're creating miracles and creating magic all of the time. But I do remember feeling very deeply that I was not enough to be there. And then, in looking at this talk and looking back on that and seeing how I feel now, I realized how much of a big story that was. I was telling myself that India was going to be horrible. And then when I went to Bolinas, I was telling myself that I was not enough and that I didn't belong there. And neither of those things turned out to be true. So this time, when I'm going to India, I'm going with a sense of joy and curiosity. And in terms of whether or not I'm enough, I don't even care. I've looked at the bios. People of the people that I'm with, they've done like really cool things. You know, he invited a well-known author, Gary Zukav, who we studied last month, and the woman who plants thousands of peace poles around the world. And he actually invited President Obama's sister, but she can't come. So, you know, I had no moment of like, I don't belong in this crowd. I'm just like, wow, this is going to be fun. You know, so you see how the old one was just a story. And this one is a story too, but it's a much better story. It's a story that inspires much joy and much inspiration and much delight. So that's what I'm encouraging for all of us, is to look at our emotions. Look at a place where you feel like you're stuck in an emotion and, you know, hello. And it's interesting that the word motion is an emotion because it's supposed to be in motion. It's supposed to flow through, right? But it gets stuck when we continue to repeat the story and story over and over again. So look at the story that's attached to an emotion that you're stuck in and ask yourself, isn't this a decision that I'm making to tell this story? And then open up, surrender, know that there is an infinite power of love for you in the universe, and see if maybe there's a better story for you. There is a better story for you. I can guarantee it. You just have to open up to be able to receive it. You know, Esther Hicks and Abraham, one of the things that they say in their teaching is that it's essential. It's the most important thing is to try and feel good. And I always felt like, wow, that feels like very self-indulgent. You know, I was sort of like, what about all the starving people and what about all the people who are suffering? But what they mean by that is that when we feel good, when we feel in alignment with love, when we feel in alignment with joy, when we feel in alignment with happiness and peace, that means that we are in alignment with the absolute reality that is God or higher power or whatever it is you want to call it. When we are in alignment with that, that is when our true power shows up and we can really, really be who we were called to be, and we can really accomplish something great in the world that not only blesses us, but blesses all beings everywhere. So that's my assignment for you. My first assignment for you is to look at where you might be stuck in an emotion and then ask yourself, is this a story that I just continue to repeat over and over again? And is there a better story that I can tell? Choose the best story. Choose the best possible story you can, and your life will be so much more filled with joy. The other thing I invite you to look at is to look at if you have made New Year's resolutions, to look at the ones that you've made and to see if possibly, if they are feeling very sort of like about self-discipline or self-improvement or obligation, and those are all important things, by the way. I am not anti-discipline. In fact, I am very pro-discipline and pro-improvement and pro-obligation. But I'm much more likely to comply if there's a little bit of joy mixed in with those things, right? So look at the resolutions that you've made already, and if they feel a little bit heavy, a little bit arduous, then if you would, see if there's a way to infuse some joy into it. You know, last year, New Year's resolution, I think I was still hitting the chocolate chip cookies pretty hard. And my approach to it was, I am going to stop eating chocolate chip cookies. I am declaring war on chocolate chip cookies. And it didn't work because, you know, in December I was still hitting the chocolate chip cookies pretty hard. So this year I'm trying a different approach that I briefly described before, is that if I want a chocolate chip cookie, I'll look at it and say, okay, is there lasting joy in this? Is this just about pleasure and instant gratification, or is this about joy? And really, instead of saying, I won't eat chocolate chip cookies, I'm saying, I will eat food that supports my body. I just shorten it to real food. So when I start having urges, I just go, nope, real food, real food, real food. Eat real food. Eat something with nutritional value in it, and you'll feel much better, and your life will be much better, and you can be a greater servant to all that you are called to do. So stuff like that. If you have a resolution that feels a little heavy, see if you can find some joy in it. The other thing is that I would be so delighted, and I haven't thought up one for myself yet, but so delighted if everybody in this room could create at least one resolution that is completely dedicated to joy. Something that you love to do, something that you love, something that is delightful to you, and make a promise to yourself to spend some time being in delight. I want to read something that Ernest Holmes wrote about joy and delight and all that stuff. He said, life is not just something to be endured. It is to be lived in joy, in a fullness without limit. It should be considered right to live and enjoy living. To be well, happy, and to express freedom is to be in accord with divine law and wisdom. Doing this thing that I wish to do expresses more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harms no one. If that is what you are called to do, it is right. It is not selfish. So you see that? The founder of our religion was a believer in joy. And I think what he's saying there is that joy is the activity of God. So when you make a dedicated promise to bring joy into your life in a unique way, in a way that is uniquely you, because we are individualized expressions of spirit, individualized points of light, then you are doing the will of the highest good. And doing the will of the highest good, the highest God, in an individualized manner, blesses everyone. Your joy blesses the world. What if we all walked around like Jerry Seinfeld and said, happy birthday? No such thing. So in the spirit of Jerry Seinfeld, I rewrote that speech he wrote about happy birthday, no such thing. And I wrote it for New Year's. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. A new year symbolizes our opportunity for joy. No matter how difficult our lives have been, we can always make room for the infinite, expansive joy present in all things. We know that we are one with God, and therefore we are one with joy always. This is who we are. This is what we are. Past, present, future, forever and ever. Happy New Year? Absolutely yes. And so it is. Let us pray. Thank you. Thanks, Margaret. Thank you. And so I turn within and trust and know that there truly is that one perfect life that is God's life, that is my life, our life right here, right now. It fills this center with its beauty and its love, and it fills us with its beauty and its love, and it goes with us wherever we go. And today we have touched that life and that love, that joy, that perfection, that sweetness that is the truth of our existence. And so today we promise to allow that life and love to live through us in wonderful and sublime and joy-filled ways. We move forward into this new year with peace and happiness, with a sense of blessedness. We move into this new year with a sense of joy and delight and goodness. We know that the life of God is our life and that the life of God wants to come out and play through us. And we know that as we allow God to play through us in magical, mystical, joyful ways, that this playfulness blesses all beings everywhere. The animal kingdom, humans, the earth, the stars, the universe, everywhere. Life is blessed because of our joy. And so I'm just so grateful for this truth, and so grateful for the transformation that has occurred here this morning due to our spiritual work together. I'm grateful for this center. I bless all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. And with a heart that is filled with love and gratefulness, I say thank you, Spirit, thank you, God. And I release these words into the divine mystery. And together we say, and so it is. I am so blessed.
Okay, so I made a new album, and it's mainly electronic dance music. And I've asked them to play electronic dance music. So they are going to bring it hard on this next song. So here we go. Okay. I'm keeping my thoughts like Disneyland. My mind is the happiest place on earth to be. You're gonna see. 'Cause I've heard it said, and I have come to find that sometimes the hardest thing to ever change is your mind. So if someone's trying to make me go insane, I just put them in a happier spot in my brain. Leave tomorrow for tomorrow, 'cause I understand you can forget about your troubles in Tomorrowland. There is just no way to sit and feel forlorn when you got the best toboggan on the Matterhorn. I'm keeping my thoughts like Disneyland. My mind is the happiest place on earth to be. You're gonna see. 'Cause it's hard to see the doom and gloom when you're taking in the party in the tiki room. And it's easier to let it slide when you're taking in the scenery on the jungle ride. And the piles of money that I am seeing are like visions from Pirates of the Caribbean. My spirit gets a lift and I feel so undaunted, like the haunted mansion was never haunted. I'm keeping my thoughts like Disneyland. My mind is the happiest place on earth to be. Would you agree? Oh, and I let myself go wandering down Main Street 'cause I can, linking arms with Pooh and Goofy and the cast of Peter Pan. For you cannot feel defeated. In fact, you really have it made when you discover that you're leading an electric light parade. I'm keeping my thoughts like Disneyland. My mind is the happiest place on earth to be. It's a state of mind and you can stay where you are, but has anger and worry ever gotten you far? So why not come and join us? After all, it is a small world. I'm keeping my thoughts like Disneyland. My mind is the happiest place on earth to be.
That was great.